that, but we've got a brochure inside the folder. It should have contact information. You can get in touch. We usually do, because we're a working farm, charge a little bit for the tours that we do, but it also ensures that we do a really good job when we do the tour. So I really try to engage people.
It's worth every penny. The amount of time that you spend, I just want to say, because I did an internship with refugee response as part of this learning garden for myself, and just being there in the summertime and watching the hard work that's done, as well as people just saying, hey, we want to do something good, we want to do a service project, and it's actually a lot of work, as you know, to host a service project. So you're very gracious about it, but I'm glad that you started charging.
It helps us.
And those are the 5, are there other countries besides?
Oh yeah, so people come, we have people from Burma, Bhutan, Burundi, which could also be kind of called Congo because that's where a lot of people come from, Somalia and Afghanistan. So we've got people on our team from all of those different places working together with English as kind of the common language, so we all, we do a lot of charades, a lot of hand gestures, yeah, so, but it's very interesting.
So this goes back to the process of how do you get a school garden going, and I'm looking at this through the design think lens, which I'm sure some of you have used in some context. So the 4D garden-based programming, the first one is discover and organize. Who are the leaders in your community who are invested in this? You have to think about what's the interest, what's the goal, what are the concerns, and what's your funding source. As I said earlier, this garden which we're presenting is, I don't want to say it's the Cadillac because it's so organic and wonderful,
It is a total Cadillac.
but it's the top of the line garden. You can do a garden in the space of these 4 tables. So what's your funding stream? What's your goal? Start small. Then you get together, which is really fun, and you sort of do the structuring, who's doing what, when, how, the money. Then you bring the community together and you dream together. We had a remarkable time at Urban Community School with parents, teachers, students, community members, government officials, where we all got together in February and dreamed big about the garden. I did the same thing I did with you, and then sort of took it a little bit further in larger groups. What would you want? What could you learn? How could you put it together? And we really, really listened to the voices of the students and the teachers. And when we got to the design process, when we drew pictures and then we gave it over to a landscape architect, we then gave it to somebody else, things that the students had requested showed up in our garden design. They wanted a lot of teepees and stones, and this garden is not a straight line, and it's whimsical, it's encouraging for kids to come out, and that's what they wanted all along. So you do the design piece, and then you construct it and you keep reflecting what's going well, what's not going so well, where do we need more funding, how do we handle volunteers, and you kind of keep going around that circle. This is one of the slides, I always get a kick out of the slide, from that I used in the urban slide deck. So why a school garden? How is that academic? Well, there's so much. I mean, you can teach anything. I feel like this group kind of gets that. But you look at it from all points of view. If you look at the environment, composting, biodiversity, stewardship, this could be taught in kindergarten, 5th grade, 10th grade, grad school. Keep going. I love this too because there's little worms holding up the banner saying solving for pattern. And worms, I have to say, are an amazing unit. And tiny literature, Diary of a Worm. You have the worms, you're exploring worms, you're talking about science, you're talking about reproductive health, you're talking about everything from a worm. So it's pretty magic. And then when it says individualized achievement, celebrating diversity, we look at it from the point of view from cultural. Especially with Maggie, we've got what can the refugees bring from what they would like to grow in a school garden. You can do 3 Sisters, or you could do pizza garden, or you could do just endless.
Okay. All right, so as Anne had said, she and Maggie came first and spoke with the faculty. It was the Environment and Sustainability Committee at our school. The exercise that she did with you all is what she did with us. And I was a new person there, it was my first year, and as I sat and listened, I was totally inspired, and I turned to our 7th and 8th level math teacher and I said, this could totally be a math lesson on scale. Like, because they gave us the blank, I have it, they gave us the blank slate, right? And what would you put in it? And I said, we've got to put this in the hands of kids. Like, they need to tell us. And like Ann said. So we created a lesson, and the unit involved real life research where they, at the end, there was a scale drawing that they had to do. They had to have a budget. So they had to do research about what do gardens look like across the country. You know, what elements that you think are essential for our learning garden, and what materials would you use, what would it cost, how much would you need in order to build at the scale that you're talking about. So like most units, you know, half the kids were like, you know. There were half that were like, oh my gosh, and literally, you know, spent hours, really, it just sparked their excitement. And those students who were genuinely interested were invited to the meeting that Ann described in February, and they presented their drawings to parents, community members, nonprofits, teachers, and we, as she described, in a group, gathered, which we'll talk about in the next step. But one of the things that I want to say is that they determined essential elements that they wanted. Community gathering space, outdoor classrooms, quiet nooks, various ways to grow things, and not one straight path. So those were the essentials. Now, what they learned, we're sharing with you, in case you aren't garden people, about all the different ways what a garden can be. So we're going to just do a quick through.
Absolutely. So they can be large or small, like we talked about. The small garden up here is a Three Sisters garden. So that's a Native American cultural link with the 3 sustaining crops that are native to the Americas of corn and beans and squash.
They are real work. It's hard work transporting soil. I've learned to call it soil rather than dirt. It's heavy. The kids step up to it. And they're an outdoor classroom. It's really important. If you want students, and especially the faculty, to go out there and teach lessons, you have to provide some sort of either shade or protection from rain or wind. But it could be anything.
STEM in action, so that science and technology, engineering, the math. We have our FBI folder, which clearly stands for fungus, bacteria, and invertebrates. As we talk about decomposition and our compost pile, and that feeds in with our compost layer cake. And we talk about the different layers that are essential for a healthy compost pile. And we can get into food webs in that regard. We also bring the food webs in with an activity. It's a square foot of gardening, or a square foot of life, and you're supposed to observe the life that might be in there. And you know, the children that would put it in the flowers would get a lot more variety of insects, for example, than they may be on the middle of the pathway. We've got a lot of opportunities there too.
They're about learning and taking risks. So I believe, I can't see what
The worms and the...
worms, and it looks like square foot gardening.
Yeah.
And just doing some.
Oh yeah, down there they're measuring the pea plants.
Exactly.
Gregor Mendel's genetics. That was his project of growing and measuring pea plants. So fun's really important. So they're, you know, rather than learning about Gregor Mendel's peas, they're growing Gregor Mendel's peas. And we have Ellen's the girl with the pretty little smile over there in her cup of a marigold, and she's coming through our willow tunnel. And it's a living tunnel of these willows tied together. And we've got another picture up here. And then the line of children is one of our Montessori classes, and you can kind of see them coming on this curvy path, and we take these caterpillar walks. It's a line, but we're all part of the caterpillar, and we twist and turn and go over rocks, and it's really popular. And as they're coming up the hill, we do have a slide that comes down.
Talk about the good choices.
Yeah, and so we do talk about this as being a classroom, and an outdoor classroom is very different from an indoor classroom. And we have students that really excel in the outdoor classroom, and their teachers tell me that how excited they are because they don't necessarily excel in the indoor classroom. but the expectations are important. We play a lot, but it's not a playground. And we talk about having walking feet and respect for nature and respect for the garden and respect for other students' plants. You know, one class might really have been working on this section of the garden, and we don't want another class to come in and disrupt that. So we get that respect for others and respect for creation and all that sort of idea.
And the photo on the right is a Green Corps farm, our Slavic Village farm, which is on Fleet Avenue. That farm, it's about 1/4 of an acre, was built on top of a parking lot. So after many, many years of adding soil, lasagna beds, tire gardens, it's actually very productive. There's a lot of perennials there. And Green Corps students get really excited and have a lot of pride.
And playing outside is learning. And interacting with the garden space and being able to move about, we learn about conservation, and the kids have an opportunity to explore, and we do measuring. Scientific method, younger kids come out for texture and different sensory things with our herb garden. So we've got a lot of opportunities for some genuine learning, and particularly informal learning.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so with the implementation of the community gardens, how is it then evaluated? Is it part of the class? Is it a separate class? Is it intertwined in the entire curriculum? Like, how is it?
That's a good question. There's a lot of ways to do it, and 2 ways it's worked at our school. When I teach with the teachers and the teacher aides and we come out and I act as a complement to what they're doing. If they're studying about, like our 8th graders were studying about genetics and Punnett squares, so outside in the garden we were able to grow pea plants, and I would meet with them once a week throughout that unit. Similarly, if we're doing nutrition, we can get together and do tastings from different food groups, and also kind of look at the plant parts as they grow in our garden while they're learning these things back in the classroom. So the teacher does, in that situation, the evaluation. Now, a second way is for next year, Natalie's written me into the special schedule. So the middle school can do this academy where they have a lot of choice. Do they want to learn about nutrition and cooking, for example? So that's where our kitchen in a box is going to come in. We're going to do a lot of nutrition lessons, but also knife skills and safety and healthy cooking techniques and things like that. And we'll be cooking not in the first class, but in every one thereafter with the kids.
Great question.
So what could be grown in a school garden? Any number of things. This beautiful picture captures all of those. I like to show this as an example because it's so three-dimensional. It's not just a line. There's art in there with the gourds. There's trellises. There's flowers. There's vegetables. In our area of the world, you have to be very wary of deer and what do you have? Groundhogs? Yeah, but that's part of the learning. What do you do about it?
Some places they get names.
So just to outline some of the elements of a successful garden, there's really some clear considerations that you have to take, right? When you're starting a garden, you want to take a look at the soil, make sure that it's not contaminated. You want to make sure you have a good water source that's near the garden, that's legal in your jurisdiction too, because Cleveland, we have a special permitting process. You want to make sure that the garden is positioned well, so that the sunlight is, you're capturing a lot of sunlight rather than having a lot of shaded areas. But then there's also some really less clear considerations that I think became really apparent to us as we went through our process. There's the whole idea, which we mentioned, that students and teachers are gone during the summer. So there's that challenge. And then there's also the challenge of kind of thinking in terms of if we build it, they will come, the whole idea that obviously teachers will use this because it's here. So those are some of the challenges that we tried in our process to solve with putting the right people in place and having the right expertise in place, which is part of why the refugee response is involved and why Brandon is kind of one of the people involved.
as we said, this structure with refugee response being farm managers, taking care of it. You can't expect teachers to be garden experts, so how do you support that? And just the maintenance crew director is critical. Well, I actually had to leave a school last year where we had a great program going, and the custodian said, "You're not welcome here," because it wasn't in his jurisdiction. Contract. So that's that part about the design piece. Who do you need on the team, and what's their role?
We've been essential to helping keep the garden look nice. The beauty of the garden is really important, and we do have a summer camp that can come in and use it for about half of the summer. But as much as we like to get the kids involved with the garden work, having a group of kids pulling weeds or doing the heavy soil moving can be a real challenge to really get the job done. So having them there has been real nice.
That's a key point. We're going to circle back to it towards the end of the presentation too. So, and I'm going to rush through some of the other stuff that we've sort of worked out. But this is just a picture for you to see the original plan. You know, when Maggie was talking about taking stock of the assets and the pitfalls and the capacity to invest. What you see here is the existing, what was existing at at Urban Community School. This was the plan for the middle school addition right here. And this was a parking lot, and there was a lot of abandoned housing. This actually was a place, what do they call that?
Well, our urban forest.
Our urban forest
6 trees.
they were considering expanding parking and getting rid of the few trees that we actually had on the campus. This was a house that had been abandoned but not land banked. So where we were looking at for the garden originally was this big. Now, we got really lucky, serendipity-wise, because as we were doing the capital campaign and thinking about the garden, we were able to figure out what to do with this house and therefore expand. And because it was a capital campaign, invest everything up front. They folded the cost, which was about just shy of 240, right? 240,000 to do everything from the soil remediation to what you will see in the pictures and have seen in the pictures of what it's become, okay? We put that into our capital campaign. Now, we understand most schools don't have that capacity, which is why we talk about the small garden and how impactful that can be. But if you are a private school, an independent school investing in a capital campaign, and you have a dream to make a learning garden a part of your school, it's a great idea because what we invested up front let us hit the ground running this year in a way that we never could have. And so that piece, we wanted to show you at first what we thought. And this is just the picture. Anne described what happened in February. I talked about what happened, but you can see some of our family. There's Brandon, and he actually wasn't employed with us at that time. He was a prospective parent. But we saw him and we're like, hey, we're going to create this position called the Garden and Healthy Lifestyles Coordinator. And you used to be over at this high school doing a garden. You want
I had to apply.
Right. He was going to be a stay-at-home dad, and we totally stole him. Part-time. Fridays are still his. But this is the math teacher who was doing the lesson of the scale. And you can see people listening to the students who are presenting from the garden club and other things. So, that gives you a sense of our designing the magic beans. And this is the plan, which we could just go through, but you can sort of see how much bigger. This is where the house was. And same thing here. This is where the house was, and this is what the plan for the garden was. The elements that the students described, having a hoop house, having a teepee, having some whimsy and magic entry, having different ways to go, covered classroom, open classroom, all those things that, now they didn't get a zip line, which they really wanted. But there was this idea of a hugel, what is it? Hugelkultur mound, which is what sort of leads, you'll see maybe, leads up and then has the slide. Yeah. Okay, so this is still new here. So we had the land at Urban Community School, and we had the desire to invest. We created, like I said, the position that is Brandon now in living form. to allow us to implement engaging garden-related life science and nutrition lessons, as well as creating inviting opportunities for getting students firsthand experiences in the garden. But we also knew that we needed a partner to help us deliver it. Like Ann was saying, Brandon's part-time, he does get his summers off to be with his family, and that's very important. And most school gardens, that's when it all goes to pot, right? So for us, knowing that the refugee response had the ability to implement and plan for production, they had the sites, you saw the farm, right? We knew they had that capacity, that they could maintain the learning garden, especially during the summer. So we decided that we needed to enter into an agreement that was this maintenance agreement with them, and you can speak to that.
Right, and it should be said that there was a construction company that did the actual initial site design and implementation, and that was part of the capital campaign that Natalie talked about. And that helped us see the full vision in year one, which was great. But by partnering with us, it was kind of, we do the maintenance, but it also helps us expand our mission to provide employment opportunities for refugees. So that's something that Urban Community School can claim that they're helping to expand those employment opportunities. And we do this through a memorandum of understanding each year. We renew this, and Urban Community School provides the refugee response with kind of a contracted upfront payment so that we can hire one person as the site manager and also cover kind of the administrative overhead that's needed to manage that person as the site manager.
And I think being where we are right now and hearing these other presentations about collaboration and partnership, what Maggie just touched on is so essential for successful partnerships. It was mutually beneficial. Our missions, the three of ours, totally align, right? You can see that. We found each other and we said, okay, how do we continue to improve your goal and your bottom line and your mission and our mission? And that's a really big part of what this conference is about.
So we did have the opportunity, like we mentioned, to have professionals involved in our site development, and that was really nice. But were also a lot of opportunities for volunteers, and for a lower budget garden, there can be a lot of volunteer opportunities. We did know, so one note is that volunteers are very well-meaning, but preparing for a group of volunteers is a lot like preparing for a class of students, in that the directions need to be very clear and make sure that people are understanding what they're working with. We lost a number of friends to some nice volunteers. So, learning opportunities, but the connections with the community and the outreach that comes with that is, I think, worth every lost flower.
So I love this picture. This is an aerial shot of our campus. So you saw that drawing in black and white. Now you see it alive. We did not expand the parking lot. We kept the urban trees, the forest, the urban. And doesn't it look like a little forest over there when you see it in real life compared to some of the other parts? And this became, for the older students, their play area. This has become when I was thinking about it, it was the oasis of healthy opportunities. So we had a playground that was built for the younger ones. We have a play area that you can't see very well over here. Obviously, our learning garden, almost the plan, almost to a T in reality. Now this is the summer. It's going to grow over the years, so I want to take an aerial shot like every couple of years to see how it fills in. But we were able to save certain elements from where the house had been, this beautiful tree, to be where the then classroom was. And then you can see the production gardens, some of them, here, back behind the play area for the refugee response. So they have, as Maggie said, the extension of the farm that is over here, and
So in these pictures you can see our hoop house. So we use that right now. We actually have a lot of greens growing inside that, we call it a cold house, and we grow cold weather crops. So choosing the right plants is important to have success. Things like lettuces and cabbages and even cilantro, actually. And then in the summer, we have the opportunity to roll up the sides for ventilation and use that same space as a hothouse for tomatoes and cucumbers and things. So we, in Cleveland, are growing plants year-round, which is a very important thing in consideration of the school calendar. A gathering space. You can see the circle of stools. That's one of a number of gathering spaces, and that lets us have at least 2 classes at a time using the garden.
And just to kind of really show you now pictures of the partnership between the school and the refugee response. We have Mohammed, who is in the background. Yep.
There's an article about him in the folder for you to look at
Please
later.
read that article, it's really interesting. But he is the site manager, so that upfront contracted payment that Urban Community School gives us allows us to hire Mohammed to manage that site. And it also helps us with the overhead of, the additional workers we need to send there at certain times and all the tools and everything we need to do the farm. And then there's this incredible opportunity. So the person in the red hat his name is Indra. He's from Bhutan. In Bhutan, before he had to flee his home, his family was a 6th-generation family farm. 6 generations had farmed in Bhutan before they had to flee their home. So there's just an incredible amount of knowledge and learning that, when Indra can kind of interact with the students, it's a really beautiful thing.
And I would put a plug too from a diversity and inclusion perspective. Urban Community School has a number of students who are children of refugees and refugees themselves. So to have Mohammed be back on staff there. So here's somebody who's from our community who's also an adult that's a part of the adult leadership here. That's really important.
Some examples of our curriculum. So Natalie's mentioned math and economics.
That means we're supposed to be done. We're going to take 2 minutes.
We're good.
Can we
Just
start
10
off?
minutes. But the top picture is middle school students, and as we talk about the asexual propagation of our garden herbs, they take cuttings and get them to root and have repotted them, and now they really take care of these plants that are in the windows inside. So these herbs have been growing through the winter in the school, and we'll be able to move them out or send them home with students. And the bottom 2 pictures show garden club, and they're harvesting and making these little, we've started calling them harvest bags, and the kids take them home, and in the surplus we end up kind of leaving by the door at the end of the school day and pushing on the kids to take this home and eat it, and it's been very popular. Cameron, one of my daughter's little friends, is feeling, so the informal learning is really important. So this river birch here has this real papery bark, and so I'm really interested in it, so I had to grab this picture, which I really like. There's a lot of the informal learning, I think, matches anything formal. We have some food preparation in the upper left corner. With the younger kids, we use the plastic cutlery knives to cut these things. Some compost in the upper right, and the lower pictures are pumpkin project for plant life cycles. And tasting and eating is the biggest part of what we do. It's the most fun. So you've got the kids, we've got our long picnic table under the shade, and in our harvest lesson, they pick food, clean it, prepare it, and eat it together all in the course of a class period. The 4 little ones at the table are doing a tasting, comparing sour apples and sweet apples. And then the raspberry bushes, if you get a garden, get raspberry bushes that have berries in September, because it is the most popular corner of the garden. Here's our kitchen classroom, so as you came in and saw our kitchen in a box out here, that's that cooking skills and those nutritional eating habits that we use. And just if you're curious, we put the box together and it's everything you need, including a plug-in burner, and it came to about $450 or so. We mentioned funding from different places, and we just found out we received a grant for $2,000 to replicate 4 more of those, and that would be enough for 20 to 25 student class to be using. We'll have 4 different kitchens set up, and 1 for the garden too.
Oh, and the connection was lost just in time. Oh. So there's still many things that we plan to do. So like Brandon said, the kitchen classroom, and Maggie alluded to this idea of creating and implementing cross-cultural and intergenerational learning opportunities between the students and the refugee response farmers. But for us, you know, UCS's vision is, I'm just going to read it to everybody. It's the children of Cleveland's near west side receive a quality education that empowers them to achieve their full potential and inspires them to give back to their community. We really believe that the Learning Garden, in partnership with the Refugee Response and the Cleveland Botanical Gardens, brings our vision to life. By investing in the Learning Garden, we expand the educational opportunities and the health and well-being of our students, and by extension, their families. It was a significant upfront investment, and we are confident that it will yield great results. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for coming. If you want to stick around with questions, we'll be happy to talk, but we are over, so I apologize for being so long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there like a
If not, maybe the west side might be looking better. That's a good opening up.
It's a great idea. That's a great idea.
I just wonder, it's not like, I like the garden, but
Yeah,
I know that demo.
Me too.
So, like, where do I learn that from?
Yeah, we've had the idea of having like seasonal workshops with the parents and the children to come in and maybe starting seeds at a certain time of year and then coming back and seeing how they're going in the garden. So that would probably be, if we get that going, that would be like an after kind of evening, like a PTO, just a night. So we do want the parents to be involved, so we can classrooms take off and they're pretty successful. I got to do that same thing on an evening. So we invite parents to come out and maybe have kids do the recipe class first. And then parents so there's a lot of ideas.